The glitz and glam is the fame, but it's the work backstage that makes the game. I'm Crystel and Bandal, your host. Come with me behind the lens and watch their stories unfold. On the previous episode, we initially met with Quintin James and talked about his childhood and discovered that with over 20 years of industry experience, he's gone through a lot, from being a competitive gymnast to dancer, acting, dancing on a cruise ship, and touring around the world. Now he's doing teaching for various categories, but what I want to learn more about is his modeling coach as a runway model coach. So welcoming back to Behind the Lens is Quintin James.
Thank you.
So now you're doing runway model coach. What do you hope to teach everybody that comes into your workshops?
How to walk. I think the biggest thing in any of the workshops or things that I teach is confidence. I think confidence plays a massive part in whatever you're doing. So what I see with whether they're children right through to adults doing runway, it's lack of confidence. And I think my job is to try and encourage that person with my skill, how to be confident in that space. So obviously there's a technique to runway walking, depending on your age, depending on what you're modeling, what garment, all those sort of things. But for me, it's building that internal confidence in that person and giving them a good skill set so that when they walk down a runway or when they are watching themselves walking, they're like, yeah, I feel like I'm doing the right thing. I feel like a model, or I feel confident.
They feel good about themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Why do you feel like it has to start from within?
I think because there's so much external elements to performing arts and also runway. There's, you know, the label. If you're doing a pro job, it's the label, it's the choreographer, it's the director, it's the media, it's whatever. If you're doing a pageant, it's the judges, it's the competition, it's the organizer, it's going to the music. And every time you do a different show or a different competition, the stage is different. You got to adapt. So I think if you're confident in your skill, you know what you can do and you do it well, you are adaptable to no matter what the situation. Yeah.
And so confidence, you'd say, is probably the biggest factor into being successful, because you have to be strong inside to withstand all that external, as you said, environment.
Absolutely.
Because it can get pretty harsh.
Oh, absolutely. It's knowing who you are. Knowing what you offer and knowing how to do what you do well, for sure.
What do you say to do you ever have students that kind of like come to you for advice when they do experience that kind of setback, that external setback?
Yeah, I do. And I think this is the interesting thing I find as a teacher is you can never teach, well, you can't teach people the same way. Everybody's different. So when they walk into the room, whether it's a private lesson or workshop, I have to work out, how does this person like to learn? What's their personality? What's their experience? What do they like to do? How do they work? How do they walk? How do they work? How does their mind work? So teaching is just as much about psychology as it is about passing on a skill set. So it's really important for me to get to know the person. So one-on-one I love, because I get time to understand how that person thinks. And that then opens the door for me to use certain things to help them understand why they do what they do. And then train them over time to use that as an advantage or block that out and replace it with something else.
Does it ever get easy? Well, you've been teaching since you said you were 15.
Yeah, 15. Yes and no. Like, I don't get nervous about teaching anymore, and I can do it quite comfortably. But I put a lot of pressure on myself in some ways as a teacher, because I want my student to walk out better than when they walked in. That's my primary goal. Sometimes that's hard, because that doesn't always happen. And sometimes I feel myself giving that student too much information, because I want them to walk out going, whoa, okay, I can do this now. And as I said, everyone's different, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But I still love teaching. I still I can't imagine myself doing anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with kind of like teaching, what's kind of like the age that your students are at? Are they kind of like variety, or
Yeah,
do you
I'm
teach like a specific?
I'm particular. To me, I don't like to teach anyone preferably under 8, 9, 10, if I can. Just because I focus more on runway rather than pageant walking. So I think when you're starting to walk on runway, there has to be a certain level of maturity within your mind and also your body for that to happen. And I think ethically within the industry as well. So because my passion is more runway, that strut, that feel, that sort of thing, I prefer to work with sort of that age group and up. Yeah.
So you also work with adults?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you also mentioned pageantry.
Yeah.
You also teach pageant contestants.
Yeah. I teach them the runway side of pageantry.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm a pageant coach. I'm more of a runway coach, and I've judged beauty pageants, which what got me into more of the runway side of things. And I focus on the walking, the runway. When it comes to some of my students will have a pageant coach and me.
Okay.
And that's why I also don't like to teach really young kids, because in the pageants, they have a particular way they're meant to move and the way that they're taught to interact with the judges, interact with the staging, things like that. And I don't want to confuse them. And it is quite difficult to get mixed messages from different coaches. So because I focus on the runway side of things, the age for me is very particular. And I'll work with coordinators of pageants and things like that. So I focus on getting them from one stage, from that pageant stage, to that runway feel. Yeah.
And then, so when you're working with like 8 to 9, do you find that they also still get confused between like the two different industries?
Yeah, very, very
How do
confused.
you work with that?
It's difficult because if they're doing lots of competitions, it goes against everything I'm trying to tell them to do. So I'm actually one of those coaches that will say, you need to stop seeing me now and just focus on your pageant coach, or do your pageantry stuff until you're ready for me, because it is very, very confusing. And when you're on stage for that 1 minute or 90 seconds or whatever it is that you have to strut and show your thing in a pageant, you can't afford to be confused. And I think for those littler kids, they have a certain way in which they're meant to interact, and I think it's important that they focus just on that. Yeah.
And I guess I think just for the benefit of our viewers, what are the differences between pageant and runway?
Okay, so I'll start with runway. Runway, if you think, I always talk about runway when I'm talking to a client, it's about not so much you, it's about your garment. So even if they're wearing their own clothes in a competition, I always think of it as you are working for a designer. So runway, to me, I go straight onto the runway like as a professional model. That's what I try and get in my students' heads or my clients' heads straight away. So you might be wearing your own garment, but I want you to think like this is a label. Your job is to sell that garment as part of a range for people to buy. It's actually not so much about you. It's about the garment. So we need to get you to show off the garment the best way. And that's by teaching you how to walk in a certain way to get you to present that on the runway, so people go, I love that jacket, I love that skirt, I love that hat, whatever it is, I want to go to that label's website and buy it. Pageantry is more about the individual person. And the way that they walk is very focused on the judges. So the judges will sit at the front of the table, and as a pageant entrant, your job is to make eye contact with those judges 24/7. Like you don't take your eyes off them, right? And it's to impress the judge. Whereas for me, when you're looking at runway, even if there are judges, I tell my clients, don't focus on the judges. Your job is to focus on the audience, because your job is to sell the garment. So there is a massive difference, in the way your headspace is when you're doing a pageant to when you're doing runway, and the way you interact with the audience, the way you interact with the judges, the way you move physically it's completely different. Very, very different. That's why it can get so confusing. And even as teenagers, sometimes it can get very confusing. So some pageants focus more on the runway when they hit a certain age and less out of the pageantry. And that's kind of where I would step in. So when they're like, do you also teach like 8 to 9 years old
let's say they're not interested in pageantry, they just
Yeah.
want to do runway, you're
Yeah.
happy to help them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the skill set is, they can use that further down the line. And just generally confidence.
Yeah.
This is the interesting thing. It's, as I was talking about confidence before, it's just knowing how to walk. Like, this is what I say to most people. Walk into a room. You want people to look at you.
Yeah.
If you are sort of sitting in the corner, or when you walk in no one pays attention to you, that's not that great. So it's all about the confidence. So when you're on the runway, you've got literally 3 seconds by the time you enter that you want people to look at you. So what you learn with me in that hour or that session or whatever, I hope you can use that daily.
Yeah.
So whether you're going into a classroom, or you're going into an exam, or you're going into a debate, or you're going into a job interview, whatever that is, or you're going on a date, whatever that is, if you're older, hopefully, you know, it's about confidence, about presenting yourself in that moment. So for 8, 9-year-olds, it's the same. It's building that confidence, so when you walk, you're not like this. You present yourself, you're in that moment. You want people to pay attention to you.
Yeah.
So it's similar to how I would teach an adult, a little less hip, a little less this, but the presence is still the same. Yeah.
Confidence, I guess, as you said, it goes with anything. So then anybody who goes into your workshop, they don't always have to go for professional modeling, I guess. It's also a way of gaining confidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
In whatever they want to do.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of people that would come to a workshop not necessarily thinking whether they want to be a runway model. And the reality is they're not all going to be a runway model. That's the reality. It's like the performing arts, like 0.1% become full-time employed in the performing arts. So you might want something, doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen. But for me, how do you generate a skill set, like I have, to allow you to do a myriad of different things that will give you happiness and success?
Yeah.
So yeah, you may not necessarily be a runway model, but you may end up coaching, or you may have a fashion label, or you might do anything, who knows? But using that skill and that confidence allows you then to go into whatever avenue you want to go. Yeah.
With that being said, do you ever go to a student up front and feel like this doesn't look like it's got stable for you in the future? Do you ever do that?
It's a good question. And in my head, yes. But I would never walk up to a student and say, take up another career. Simply because it's so easy to crush someone's dreams. And then you'd be surprised. I mean, I look back at things that people have said to me, positive and negative, in my childhood, and I think that didn't have an impact. But if I'm 45 years old and I still think about that and how I felt in that moment when that person said that thing to me, it did have an impact. So as a teacher, or as a mentor, or as a person, I think a certain level of honesty has to be there. But you have to put it in a way that is going to be beneficial for that person. I never want to say, you know, I still want them to get confidence. And I think for me, go into that industry, work it out for yourself. Some realities are some realities, that's how it is. But I think as they start to progress further down the line and closer to that, they start to realize maybe it's not what they thought it was going to be, or it's not as easy, or it's not for them. And it's best that they work that out themselves. Yeah.
And that's okay, as like you said before, with everything that you've experienced, sometimes it is better when you do it yourself. Yeah.
And having the people around you then to go, okay, well, that didn't work out. How do we help navigate you into what you want to do next? I mean, I know a lot of people, and I have this from parents, say to me all the time with dancers, my child's never going to be a dancer. It's like, it doesn't matter. They've learnt posture, they've learnt poise, discipline, skill set. They may decide they've had a corporate career for 20 years, hate it, and want to open a dance studio. You don't know what's going to come back to you. You know, so if you're teaching something the right way and you're imparting that level of confidence and security, later down the track, that person may use that. And that's a benefit to them at some point.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, as a coach, not just as a runway model coach,
Yeah.
you're just kind of there as a guidance or support, but not there to literally give them a silver spoon and be like, you're going to be a professional model.
I never say that, ever.
Yeah.
because I can't guarantee that. The industry is so difficult. It's so hard. The success rate is so small that I would never turn to someone and say, you are definitely going to do this. I will look at kids or people that I coach and go, you need to focus on this. Like, you should really do photographic. You should go and do this, or you should focus on this. But whether they succeed, I don't know. It's also up to them.
Yeah.
If you've got the drive and the passion to take the knockbacks and not let it affect you, you'll be successful.
Yeah. So it also depends on their passion and how determined they are.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I teach kids now and they have no drive at all, but they keep coming back to class. I'm like, why are you here? Why are you here? You know, you're making my life hell. Why did you come? You're not. But they don't have the drive to succeed. Their parents have the drive for them to succeed, but they don't have the drive. So for me, as a young gymnast or dancer, I would go to class, come home and stretch, do the choreography so I knew it the next day in class. I wanted to impress my teachers and I wanted to be the best. Not once did my parents ever say to me, you need to practice. What they would say is, you need to study. And I'd go, I'm too busy practicing. You know.
Yeah.
So it's worked out okay for me. But it comes internally. Everything has to be internal. You've got to have the drive to push yourself the next level, not expect someone to do it for you. You've got to be the one asking your parent, Mum, Dad, can I do this competition? Can I do this class? Can I do this? Can I go see that person? You have to be the driving force, not the parents.
Yeah. And what is it like when you have that kind of student?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's because, to be honest, it's rare.
Really?
Honestly, it doesn't come around that often. You would think it would be the opposite, but it's not. When you have a student that is a sponge and is hungry and is asking lots of questions and is passionate and wants to do the next thing, to me, I'm like, I have an Oprah moment. The light bulb goes on, I'm like, you all get a car, yay! Because it's great for me, because I'm like, yes, I can work with you.
Yeah.
You know, and then I go, no matter what you decide to do, I think you're going to do well. Yeah.
That's so surprising, because usually just kind of like listening around with like friend groups and stuff, they kind of like think, wow, modeling is kind of like is what a lot of people want to do. Why do you think it's so rare? Do you think is it like they just lose interest, or they don't want to go through the process?
I think they don't understand the reality of the industry. It's nice to say I want to be a model, it's easy. I'm going to stand in front of a camera and get paid thousands of dollars. I'm going to walk down the runway and get $10,000. No. It's actually really difficult.
Yeah.
You know, it's tiring, traveling, it's hard work, dieting, working out. Your life is that one thing. And I think people have the glamour side of modeling. You know, I just want to be on a magazine, I just want to do this, I want to get paid lots of money. No. When they start to realize it's actually hard, there's a lot of competition, and the requirements and restrictions on it are very tight, they kind of go, it's too much work. Yeah.
Do you also teach that side of, do you show that side of the industry to your students?
I'm 100% transparent, yes, because I think it's important. It's very important that they understand what they're getting into, because not a lot of people talk about it. Because you have agents, you have casting people, you have different people telling you you're going to be a star, you're going to do this or whatever else, and it's not the reality. The reality is it's hard work. The reality is the photo shoots, the free work that you may need to do just to get a portfolio if you can't afford one. The people that will try and take advantage of you financially, emotionally, all these different things, the things that you need to do to succeed. Yeah, it's super rewarding, but no one talks about it.
Yeah.
Right? And yeah, very, very. And I just go, well, that's not fair, because I was taught by those professionals when I was dancing the reality of the industry. You know, I was like, yeah, I'm going to tour, I'm going to dance with recording artists, I'm going to be amazing. And the reality is, yeah, I did do that, but I also had times where, you know, I had no money, you know, or I had no work and I had to struggle. So it's not an easy life.
Yeah.
And I think the reality is that needs to be talked about. The industry itself, the reality of the industry, as well as the exciting part and the glamorous side, there is a dirty side. Like a flip coin, there's always the other side. And I think that needs to be discussed, and I do discuss it in all my workshops.
That's good, that's very good to educate the students.
Yeah.
But aside from the students, you've definitely got like these 8 and 9 years old, or like a little more mature, like the teenagers or young adults. What about the parents? Do you also speak to them about it? because they also support their they have to support their children financially, but also like the emotional support. Do you ever speak to them about these things?
I encourage parents to have open dialogue, but I don't like parents sitting in on a lesson. Generally, if I teach a private lesson, I will get a parent to come in towards the end and show them what we did and explain what needs to happen next. They need to practice this, so that we're all on the same page. Because so many times a student will leave, whether it's particularly a child, will go and they'll say, "Oh, I don't need to do anything," and they come to the next lesson. I'm like, "Did you do X, Y?" "Well, I didn't know." So for me, being all on the same page is super important. So I invite the parent in. I invite the parent to ask any questions that they want. It's important that we're all on the same page, because to me it's a team. I'm not just this one person that's going to create something. We all have to be together, because if that student needs to practice or they need to do X, Y, and Z, I need the parents' support that they're going to allow them to do that or encourage them to do that. And I do it for myself, because the next week or the next time I have that client, if something hasn't been done or if they haven't improved, the parent knows why. You know what I mean? It's basically, well, you had all this stuff to do and you didn't do it. So open dialogue is super important for me. Yeah.
And it's also very important to get that support from the parents, not just from you.
Yeah.
Because they might only see you like once a week or maybe once a fortnight or something like that.
Yeah.
They also need that kind of reminder, because it's that repetition that gets you to be successful in what you actually want to do and achieve your idea.
Yeah.
I think what I want to touch up on is when you're training a pageant and or a runway student, is the mindset different as well?
Yeah.
In what way?
Okay. So yes and no. So if I'm teaching someone runway, it's easy for me because I focus on just one thing, which is present yourself, present the garment, this is the technique, this is your goal. Your goal is not to impress a judge, your goal is just to be present and represent a label, whether it's your own or whatever it is. Pageant, it is a different mindset because the audience doesn't matter in a pageant. It's all about those 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 judges sitting there. You ignore the audience. So the way I teach has to be very, very different, because if a pageant kid focuses on the audience, they lose the judge contact, therefore they don't place.
Yeah.
That's my fault. If a runway person focuses too much on judges and not the audience, then they're not doing their right thing. So it is very, very different. Yeah.
Do you still think confidence plays equally important for both of them?
Yeah. And the thing is, as I said before, I was shy as a kid. So sometimes confidence doesn't come naturally.
Yeah.
So what helped me was acting, because I learned how to be a character. Yeah. So sometimes when I was on stage, I wasn't myself, I wasn't Quintin, because I was shy or nervous or anxious or whatever. So I would put on a character, So that's what I teach these guys as well. Sometimes you don't want to do that, or you don't feel confident or comfortable. You have to pretend you are. Yeah. And if you are a runway model and you're a professional runway model, they don't care how you feel. They want you to do a really good job because you're getting paid good money. So effectively, this is not very nice, but it's what I tell them: if you runway, you are a walking coat hanger. Because it's about the label. Yeah. It's not about you. You become famous and celebrity and whatever else because of the labels that you work for and the success that you have. But you only get that by doing such a fantastic job that all these other labels want you, and then there's campaigns and things like that. So confidence is important, but sometimes you don't feel confident. Yeah. You have to pretend. No one's going to pay you $10,000 to walk down the runway like this. Yeah. So you have to put on a character. And I think having that in the bank, in your back pocket, if you need it, is helpful. Yeah.
Just having that mask on when you need it. Because you're not always going to have a good day. No. There will be some days where you do need that mask. Yeah. And I guess something as well, just going back to what you said, that they don't really care about you, that you're a walking coat hanger. There's obviously been kind of like a trend kind of like circulating. People are just talking more about the health of the models. What's your opinion on that? Kind of like models just making themselves hungry just so that they can be that skinny to fit in the garment and get the job.
it's a hard situation because I don't agree with it at all. And I think everyone deserves a representation. And this has been the biggest thing. We look at runway and the general population, like 90% of the population cannot fit in anything that those models wear.
Up on stage.
No, they just don't exist. And sample sizes in the US and in Europe don't actually exist. They're sample sizes. So they're not an actual size that you can buy.
Yeah.
So that's ridiculous. That's not normal. And that's the point is, okay, you have a career, so it comes down to, do you want the job? And we are stuck because the industry dictates what you need to do. So if the industry is saying you need to be a certain size, and you go, no, I don't, then that's fine, go for it, but you're not going to get as much work. Are you okay with that? It comes back down to confidence and owning yourself and owning your future and your presence. So I won't bow down to that. I will do it my way because I don't see that as healthy or I don't see that as good. Yeah. And I think that's the interesting factor is we've had a big resurgence in that with the mental health issues, the physical health issues, that those sample sizes don't exist anymore. You know, it is changing. And I think but for a very, 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 very long time, it was that way. And as a model, you have to either do it or just get out of it.
Yeah, no money in it. You're not.
Well, that's just the reality. This is what it comes down to with the reality of the industry. If you're getting into an industry, you have to understand what's required of you in the industry. So yeah, you can have talent or you can do all these things, but if you're not prepared to do those extra things that the industry requires you to do, are you in the right industry? That's what it comes down to. And unfortunately, the industry dictates. Yeah. It's the same as the acting. It just dictates what it wants. And as a client in that, or someone that wants to work in that, you have to sometimes conform to that to get the job. And I think it just tipped too far where we were seeing these skeletons walking down the runway and someone's like, seriously, McDonald's should just sponsor this, feed these people a burger. And girls who are just physically sick and mentally sick. Yeah. But then you have the flip side, and no one talks about male modelling, where they're living in a gym, they're taking diuretics, they're taking mood stabilizers, they're taking all sorts of different things to stay extremely low body fat percentage. You know, so it's across the board. And I think it's extremely unhealthy. Is it going to completely change? No, I don't think so. Is it changing? Yes. How quickly that changes, I don't really know.
Is it changing for both male and female models?
It's changing more for females than males.
Really?
Yeah. I think because we've got the Me Too movement, we've got all these different movements for women, empowering women, which is fantastic because it's well overdue. Yeah. And we're now seeing models of different shapes on the runway, different hair colors. We've got all sorts of different things coming out, and I think it's super important because, as I said, 95% of the population don't look like that. And we're seeing that in media as well. We're seeing all sorts of different things. I don't think we're seeing that with men. We still expect men to be 6'1", 6'2", 6 whatever, built, ripped, six-pack, 8% body fat.
Do you think they also need their own kind of movement to kind of start a change?
Well, yes and no, because I think if you're working out a lot, you're pretty fit. Yeah. And I don't know that many guys that don't want to look good. The issue is when you have to maintain a certain body fat percentage, which is really difficult. It's like, well, I'll eat chicken breast and broccoli leaf, you know. But that's the same with bodybuilding. It's the same with a whole range of different industry competition type things. You have to do that if you want to be in that competition or you want to succeed. It comes down to the industry. That's what the industry wants. Do it. If you don't like it, hop out. Yeah.
And with conversation's just gone a whole flip.
Sorry.
On the other side of the whole industry. No, it's okay. We need to talk more about it. People need to realize these things, and that's what Behind the Lens is about, uncovering this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Does it, when you're up there on the catwalk, is there anybody, like, any time where a model is not getting the pay that they need and they're not able to sustain themselves? Because I have watched and read a few things before I actually decided I wanted to do a bit of modeling. Yeah. There are a lot of people struggling to even to have a sustainable life. Is that a regular occurrence in the industry?
Yeah.
And do you ever have any students that have gone through that?
Yeah, like, it's hard. It's the same as performing arts. You've got to chase the work, and it's not consistent. Modelling is not consistent unless you're like the top 5%. That's it. And with the decline of media, like magazine, we don't have print media anymore. Like, we had all these magazines, you know, that would allow new up-and-coming models opportunities to strut their stuff and be photographed and whatever else. And we used to have a lot of small independent labels doing fashion shows, left, right and centre. We don't have it anymore. In Australia, particularly Sydney, we don't have small labels putting on shows. We don't have magazines doing that. So it's difficult for up-and-coming models to learn. As I said, as an artist for myself, I learned on the road. Like, I went to class and I did drama, but you learn when you're there and working with professionals. We don't have a lot of that here in Australia, unfortunately. So the workload is very small, and unless you're prepared to be diversify and be quite experimental and try different things, and if you're just going to focus on one thing, it's going to be difficult to make money unless you become that top 5%. And there's only so many agencies in Australia, and there's only so many agencies in Sydney that will take people, and their windows are only open for a short amount of time, and their requirements are very strict because they want to sell their product, i.e. the model, overseas, because there's more money overseas than there is here. So once again, the industry dictates. So it is difficult to sustain an ongoing career if you're focusing, I just want to do runway. There's no work here. There's just none. We have Australian Fashion Week, Mercedes Fashion Week. We have, you know, the occasional Grace Brother, Maya kind of fashion parade. We don't have anything going. When I was in the modelling industry back in the 90s, there were shows every weekend. There was, so many different things. Like, I worked with so many small labels that were quite happy to use models for experience or pay them a small amount of money, like an appearance fee, to model their stuff. And we would do shows in clubs and shopping centres, and also there's none of that anymore. Tell me the last time you would go to a venue and see a fashion parade. You don't.
The only one I know is Mercedes.
That's right. We used to do fashion parades in nightclubs before the club opened at 10.
Really?
So we would, you know, have a massive show and a competition or whatever else, or a label, drinks, canapes, and then the nightclub would open at 10 o'clock. And it would be packed. Because people wanted things to do, and it was great for the industry because it was great for these models to, you know, learn how to do a good job professionally. You know, work with different labels, work with designers, work with me, of course. But not just me, but there were a lot of different companies and production companies doing that. It's difficult because we don't have it now. So I think that's the downside to the industry at the moment.
It's tougher to start a career now in the modelling industry? What would you
yes, sorry to interrupt, but yes and no.
Okay.
I think yes, because there isn't so much opportunity, but no, because there is that resurgence of you don't need to be a skeleton or you don't need to be a certain height. We've dropped a lot of height requirements, we've dropped certain things. So in that way, yes, because we are looking more multicultural, we are looking for different faces, different bodies to represent a brand. And most brands are moving out of what they used to have, which was only a size this, you know, this to 6 or whatever it is, because that's not their market. They're not making money. So in that sense, yeah, it's easier because we're seeing more people, but it's harder because we don't have the same opportunities as we used to have to tread the boards and try different things and experience. We
were talking about the industry and how unfair it is and how it gets very tough. What is your advice to the aspiring models now to start a career? What's your advice on how to take that first step?
The first thing I would say is, it comes back to knowing who you are and educate yourself. I'm all about education. Like, know what you're getting involved in. That's why I teach the way I teach. If you don't know what you're stepping into, you're going into it blind. So educate yourself, whether that's by people like me that can give you the information or read online or whatever. Educate yourself. Understand who you are, because you're going to get a lot of people telling you you're not good enough. You're too tall, your eyes are weird, you're a weird shape, your hair's, I don't like this, your nose is funny, your ears, just everything, right? they're going to pull everything apart. And it can get to you because you start to think about yourself going, I'm not worthy of anything.
I'm not perfect enough kind of thing.
Yeah, but that trickles into the rest of your life. You know, I'm not worthy, I'm not attractive enough to find a partner or have friends, and we have a massive high issue with depression and anxiety as it is. So know who you are, educate yourself on the industry you want to get involved in, and be prepared to try different things. Don't just limit yourself, have tunnel vision and limit yourself to one thing, because if I had done that for myself, I wouldn't have the career I've had. The only way I've been able to do what I've done and make money and do the things is because I'm versatile. I can do multiple things. And it's great if you want to excel at one thing and just be an elitist, like a ballet dancer or this or just that, totally fine. But then also know on the flip side to that, your work may not be the same. Mm-hmm. So educate yourself on the industry you want to get involved in, and know the pros and the cons of it, and be prepared for those, and learn who you are as a person. And you can't say to an 8-year-old, you need to know who you are. I mean, it's an evolution, and you only learn those things through life experiences, you know, through success and failures. And I mean, I'm 45 and I know who I am now, but if you would have asked me 15 years ago, who are you? I would have given you some cocky answer that was not true. So it all comes with evolution, but be prepared to change, and change with the industry. And if you don't agree with something, don't do it.
So as a teacher, knowing everything that the industry is,
mm-hmm.
how do you cram everything in to your lessons?
You've got to be selective with the information you give when. Mm-hmm. And also it depends on the student. So I can give you a bunch of information in an hour, your head will explode. And you walk out more confused as when you walked in. So it comes down to, like I was talking about, your personal evolution. The way you go through a skill or learn a skill, let's say runway modeling, that has an evolution as well. So I think giving the right piece of information or the right amount of information, depending on what stage you're at, is important. So I try not to give too much because I don't want to scare people. Mm-hmm. At the same time as I don't want to encourage them to just, you know, this is easy for you or whatever. It's also getting to know the person, knowing what they can handle information-wise. So it's all got to do with stages, their development stage, where they're at emotionally, spiritually, and where they're at in their career. It's important to give them that at that time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now that you've been doing runway modeling coach for how long?
Well, the first I did was probably about 15 years ago.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, so off and on for about 15 years. Yeah.
And your upcoming project now is going to be with the Runway Academy.
How exciting! How exciting is that? I'm pumped.
It's going to be very soon.
Yes.
What do you hope to achieve in particular, maybe at this point in time? Do you still have the same vision when you're teaching students, or does it ever shift?
Okay, this is a very good question. And because I am excited about this project, particularly because we talk about Me Too, we talk about different revolutions and changes. And I impart some of that in my lessons, but in my experience, I've not been involved with a company yet that shares the same vision as me or same ethos as me, that wants to give all that information, the good, the bad, the ugly, mm-hmm. and help those people within that navigate where they want to go and support that. So for me to get involved in a company that is transparent like that, that wants to support the up and coming talent with reality as well as confidence and help and nurture and tuition and all that stuff, is super exciting for me, because agencies don't do it. There are other companies that they offer runway, yeah, sure, or coaching, but they don't do that. So to be involved and help develop a program that is the next phase, I actually just see it as another revolution. Mm-hmm. It's the next phase of runway and coaching and development in this country. Mm-hmm. I'm like so excited, because I think a certain way now to be involved with a company that goes, wow, we've been thinking that, but no one wants to share that information because it's a bit. I'm like, well, that's what we need to talk about. We need to talk about that, and we need to talk about this. There's two sides, and we need to discuss it all, and we need to lay it out on the table. So for me, it's not just about how to walk. It's about contracts. It's about not getting ripped off. It's about all sorts of things, plus the confidence and the labels and photographic. It's a range of different things. So to be involved now with a company that wants to explore all those and develop those, and not just run a workshop and see you later, bye.
Yeah.
It's not about that. It's about developing a program and an ongoing program and a mentorship, so these people can get involved and not just walk away out of 8 weeks and go, yeah, whatever, see you later, good luck, we got your money. It's not about that. Yeah, it's not about that. It's literally about, okay, we are now here for you. We are a family, we are going to do this, and we're mentoring you and we're going to help you. We can't do it for you, but we can give you the information for you to then feel confident and comfortable to go out and go, right, I'm going to explore this. And then come back and say, what do I do next? How do I do this? And then, different types of workshops and seminars and talks, and I'm just pumped. I'm excited. Yeah, really excited about it, because I've been wanting to do this for ages, and it's just nothing's been an opportunity for me to do it, and now I'm like, okay, it's exciting.
We're very excited to have you on board.
I'm so pumped, actually. I'm so excited.
It's so good to have somebody who has the same vision, especially because as a student you can't just learn about one thing. There's a lot of things you have to know about. That's very important. It makes you a very good teacher.
Well, thank you. I try. But
so the modeling industry, it has a lot of its ups and downs, and just kind of like, this is what Behind the Lens is all about. We want to show you the good side and the bad side, because it's not just about the little glitz and glam that you see on Instagram or Facebook. There's a lot of hard work that goes behind it, and there are a lot of sacrifices that also go behind it. And students need to be educated about this. And I'm very glad to have been able to sit here, or even get the chance to meet Quintin James, because he shares the same vision, not just for his students now, but to kind of start a revolution, not for Australia, but hopefully the whole world. I'll see you guys in the next episode. From being a young gymnast and acrobat, he became a dancer, an actor, and a whole multitude of things in the performing arts, entertainment industry. He then became a coach for a variety of things. A runway model coach is one of his professions today, and he's working to educate students about the modeling industry, its goods, and also its bad and ugly side. Because you not only need to know the benefits of your work, but also the requirements that it needs for you to be successful, so that you can have a happy, successful life, but also a very colorful and a very fully lived life. This is Behind the Lens, and we'll see you guys next time.